Welcome to New Chapters, the podcast where I explore what happens after the pivot, the bold moves, the quiet resets, and the powerful reinventions that shape extraordinary lives. Proudly sponsored by Mylands, the heritage paint company, who not only have a royal warrant, but whose colours have graced the sets of Harry Potter and 007 movies. In my first ever episode, I speak to Amanda Wakeley OBE. She's dressed royalty. Her name practically is royalty when it comes to British luxury brands. And now, a chart-topping podcaster. I'll be drilling into how to do that, believe you me. We'll also be talking about, over the next 50 minutes or so, what it's like, really, to dress some of the world's most beautiful women. We'll find out how COVID took a wrecking ball to her life and how to reinvent yourself with grace, positivity, and purpose. Plus, we'll have our quick fire round where I peek into the personality behind the public face. Amanda Wakeley, thank you so much for agreeing to come on to my brand new podcast. A really, really warm welcome. I suppose this feels really familiar to you. You're on season 8 now of Style DNA. You're a pro at all this. I'm going to need some tips from you, but just tell us about this new chapter.
How you can say you're a pro when, I'm talking to one of the queens of broadcasting. But yes, it's been a fascinating journey, I have to say. I've always been fascinated by people's stories. And, in the spare time I've ever had, I've always reached for a biography, for a book to take on holiday. And I suppose I started my label back in 1990 because it was all about making women feel the best version of themselves. I understood the power that clothes have to be quite transformative and quite armor-like at times, and that we message through them, and at times we cocoon ourselves in them. So I started writing the outline of a book quite a few years ago, and I called it Discovering Your Style DNA. And it was really, I wanted to take people on the journey as to how they worked out who they were stylistically. And then I put the book aside because I realized I was far too busy with running a business, or not running a business, but being a creative director of my eponymous brand. And it wasn't until COVID and then the end of my business that I thought, do you know what? I really would love to create a podcast out of the beginnings of that book, because part of the beginnings of that book, I'm sorry, this is a really long answer, but I will come to the point.
I love
Part of the beginnings of that book was a little sort of style questionnaire to help you work out who you are stylistically. And I took that questionnaire and I thought, actually, that would make the best spine or skeleton of a podcast interview. And then I've always loved Desert Island Discs. And I thought, well, do you know what? This is a sort of style Desert Island Discs. This could be fun.
I love it. I suppose this was a really natural progression for you as well, because as part of the design process, you have to very quickly get sort of personal with often really, really big name people. So it's a skill in and of itself. You might have not have been a broadcaster, but you could talk to anyone.
Yes, I've been lucky enough to always be able to talk to anyone. I find that quite easy and fascinating. But also, I had a beautiful flagship store on Albemarle Street in Mayfair, and I created these events that I called Wakeley Wellbeing. And it was always my vision to create a sort of salon type environment. Had a lovely sort of drawing room upstairs in the store. And so once a month, I would hold these Wakeley Wellbeing evenings where I would interview someone in the health and wellness sphere. So little did I know at that time, it was starting to hone my interviewing skills. I have such a long way to go, and I am in awe of you broadcasters because you just keep it going. But it that really helped, because you go down rabbit holes, then you have to pull it back, but while allowing for that rabbit hole to be that fantastic opportunity of interviewing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love a rabbit hole because that's where you often go to sort of strange and wonderful, unexpected places, and people give you answers that you aren't necessarily expecting.
Exactly.
And, has there been, apart from the fact that you're doing something completely different, has does life look very different? I mean, you talked about how you were too busy to write a book. In this new chapter, is life, more consciously, and it's a horrible phrase, and I can't bear it, but except it sums it up perfectly. Are you more mindful of what you're doing and your life nowadays?
Yes, but for a different reason, because I had a break. I had the business going into administration, and then my darling brother Charlie died 2 weeks later. Now, we knew the business was going into administration. We also knew that Charlie was dying. But when those things happen, they hit you like a juggernaut.
Mm.
And so I I was, for the first time in my adult life, I've always been a doer. I've always had amazing stamina. I've always just taken the attitude JFDI. You just get up in the morning and you just do it. And, whatever you're feeling, you just, you power through. I was that
Yeah.
generation. And for the first time in my life, I found myself A, without an office to or studio to be going into, and B, actually, honestly, incapable of doing any of that anyhow. I had been forced to stop. And so I did a couple of things. I thought, do you know what? I'm exhausted. I had been in survival mode for 30 years because you are as an entrepreneur, and I don't care how successful you are, but I don't know any entrepreneur that's not subconsciously in survival mode. And 30 years, that's a long time on your adrenal system and all of that. I was absolutely knackered, and I had just powered through on willpower and determination and passion. And so I knew I needed a bit of a break, and I knew I needed time to grieve A, my brother, but B, my business, which had been my passion, my family, my I know that sounds a bit pathetic, but it was, and
The
my
family you choose in a way.
yes, and all of that, and that lifestyle of going into the studio and creating and working with a fabulous team. And so at that point, I'd always been fascinated by meditation, but I thought, do you know what? I am going to make myself do a little guided meditation every day to help quieten my mind and focus myself. And so that's what I did. And now I've forgotten the question that you asked me because I went on such
Well,
a
no,
rabbit.
I suppose what's the biggest difference to your life? Is it a bit slower? But I mean, obviously you were knocked sideways by what happened, but have you managed to maintain that, or have the ants come back in your pants?
Oh my God. I said to someone the other day, it was last night actually, I have never been busier. And because I've got the podcast, and so I'm either researching guests or I'm writing a newsletter to my database, whatever it is, 12,500 subscribers who are very, very actively, I have a phenomenal sort of open rate on that newsletter because they want to hear my thoughts about who my next podcast guest is. Or then I created this social media YouTube video that I call Friday Night Fashion, and I did do it with an ex magazine editor, Joe Elvin. So we're opining on all things fashion, and we go shopping together and all of that.
Yeah,
So
I love it.
that's
Yeah.
Hungry Beast that goes out once a week on Friday nights, and I do expert commentaries on whether it's Wimbledon dressing or what people wore to the Met Gala or whatever it is. And those comments go out in, whether it's the Times or the Independent or wherever I've been requested for comments from. Then I've got all my content creation for Instagram or TikTok and all of that. And I am really, really excited to say that I am writing that book finally.
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing all about your book, but if we can focus on, I suppose, what will probably be in those early chapters for you
Yeah.
and your early life, because I was reading about it, and your father was an eminent surgeon,
Right.
Sir John Wakeley, and he was a baronet, no less. So you had a very amazing upbringing, I suppose you could say. Cheltenham Ladies College, best education you could get. I read that you didn't necessarily love your time there, but on reflection, it was probably really good for encouraging your creativity. Is that fair?
It is absolutely fair. It's not that I didn't I just missed my family.
Yeah, you had a lovely family, basically.
It was an amazing education. It's an amazing school, and what was fantastic about it is, yes, it's huge sort of accolades and all the rest of it, but they would pull out of you whatever was your strength. And for me, that was the art department. And so instead of making you, pushing you down STEM when you didn't have a brain that was wired like that, they would draw out and make you confident and believing in yourself. And I think that was the incredible thing about that school. I don't know anyone that's come out of that school that hasn't just got a sort of self-belief.
Yeah. That's fantastic. I mean, what a testament for the school. And in those days, unlike now, it wasn't a given that everyone would automatically go on to university. And you went off pretty quickly, didn't you, after school, what, 18, 19, to the States? And
Yeah.
was this to pursue modeling? And for those people who've been living under a rock and don't know what you look like, and in case anyone's not watching this, and they're just listening on Spotify, I mean, the long blonde tresses, but the legs for days as well, and those piercing blue eyes. I mean, you look like you would be completely comfortable on a runway alongside Elle Macpherson, Naomi Campbell, all the big supermodels. Was that what, you took you to America?
It's so untrue, but thank you. I will take the compliment. But no, it wasn't. I just wanted to go and live in another country. I was rubbish at languages, and so America just seemed like the obvious place. It was the 80s. And also, this is going to sound really British. I wanted to go and live close to the beach, get my feet in the sand and live in the tropics. And so I first moved to Miami, and then I sort of fell into modeling, and that took me up to New York for a couple of years. That was my sort of life education. I learned the phenomenal work ethic of the Americans.
Yeah. And the
And the
positivity,
just
which I think you've totally fostered as well. I mean, maybe you were always a positive person, but it strikes me that even when, you've been tested by things, you've had this amazing grace and, this resilience, but positivity. You never want to feel sorry for yourself. And that is something that Americans really champion, isn't it?
They really do. They just, they believe in everybody. And I suppose also I was lucky enough to grow up in that environment. I think that's probably more important. I grew up in a family where, give it a go. We're here. If it all goes belly up, we're here for you. When I started my tiny little label back in 1990, my parents just were, give it a go. This is very exciting. You're good, and we believe in you. And if it all goes wrong, it all goes wrong.
And do you think that experience of modeling in New York, where, they have these huge fashion weeks and all of those sorts of things, was where you started to experience the design process and see designers and see dresses being made? Or was that already happening?
What I had the privilege of being exposed to was when I was modeling in Florida. It was an era where the big houses would send across their trunk show collection, and there would be a group of us models. I think we were even called runways. I think that was the agency. I can't even remember. And we would do these beautiful but little salon shows at, the Breakers in Palm Beach or somewhere in Miami, and to a very VIP invited audience of, maybe 100 people. And so I got to see up close these beautiful, beautiful trunk show collections. And I had made clothes since I was that high, ever since I was big enough to use the sewing machine. But to see the clothes of this caliber so up close and not be, faking being a customer in a department store, but having the privilege of putting them on, seeing how they felt, how transformative they were. And then when I moved up to New York, I worked very closely with a brilliant retailer who was the best way to describe him was the Joseph of New York. He was a man called Henry Lear. And he had these brilliant retail shops, but he also had created a couple of fashion labels that were very big back in the 80s. One was called Go Silk, and I worked with, which was all lovely sort of army surplus type pieces, but cut and made in a sand washed silk and then garment dyed. So just these very, very cool pieces, oversized cargos, oversized men's shirts with pockets and, very, very much sort of army inspiration, but in beautiful colors. And so I worked very closely with him in the showroom and going off on trunk shows and all of that. So it gave me a different side of the business too, to start understanding how the business actually functions.
It's funny, isn't it, also how you really remember the people who were pivotal that, really shaped the path of your life, whether that's, in the early days or I guess when you have a hardship as well. You remember the people who are not the fair weather friends, but the ones that, are there for you. And those people were key in your early days.
Totally, totally. The same is true when you go through a divorce. I remember my dear, dear friend handing me a Tipex pen back in the days that everyone was writing in, address books. And I said, "What do I need that for?" And she said, "You're going to need it for your address book. Trust me." And she was so right. And that's fine too. We evolve our friendships and that's life.
Well, let's talk about how things really took off because you found yourself back in, Southwest London, and you were young, cut glass, blonde, and suddenly you had this young cut glass, father with a title, blonde as a regular for you. And I'm talking about Princess Diana, and she was thrust into this world at a very young age. I actually looked it up; she was just a year older than you, so you were two young women in this extraordinary experience together. And her sort of frequency to your design studio, do you think that that played a big part in your brand becoming, global, stratospheric, really?
I think so. I did a lot of her off-duty clothes, so lovely suedes and cashmeres uh but I also did quite a few suits for her, and I still don't know how it happened to this day, but she resigned from public life wearing Amanda Wakeley in an era when that wasn't, when designers weren't really being credited.
Yeah.
Like, it was just starting to happen. But sometimes her dresses were being, by Bruce Oldfield, by Victor Edelstein, by whoever. But when it was literally front page of the Daily Mail. Princess Diana resigns from public life wearing Amanda Wakeley, and
Have you got that on your bathroom wall? I hope so.
I've got it in a press book. I haven't. I mean, it was a very sad moment too.
Yeah.
But my God, we sold out on that suit, immediately.
Well, I'm glad you're keeping all those press cuttings. Do you think the fact, though, that you were, similar age, similar backgrounds, young women, that really helped your friendship and I suppose the trust as well? Because as you just named a few of the designers that were doing the rounds at those ages, they sounded like they were all men of a certain age.
Yes, we had fun. That was the lovely, lovely thing, and I was lucky. The then deputy editor of Vogue, Anna Harvey, late great Anna Harvey, was advising the young Princess of Wales on her style and how to evolve it. And she introduced me. She said, "I'm going to introduce you. I know you two will get on really well, and I know I can trust you." And it was really, really beautiful, and I will never forget the first time. I mean, it was still early days in my little
Yeah.
business, and I had this tiny, tiny little design studio in the back end of Chelsea, and it was my flat, but because of the way it had its own front door and steps up and a lovely little porch to this tiny two-bedroom flat. But I'd sort of had double doors put up so that you literally walked into the drawing room or sitting room, which was my showroom, and then there were double doors to the other way that took you through to my bedroom and bathroom and the workroom. And that was it. But you had the feeling that you were walking up into this house, which is great, but you weren't. And So I will never forget thinking, okay, she's coming at 3 o'clock. I'll, get everything ready, and then I'll put some makeup on and brush my hair. Well, at 10 to 3, the doorbell goes, and I think, okay, this will be, the sniffer dogs and the police checking it out and all
Yeah.
the rest of it. Oh no, there is Diana standing on one leg, literally like a naughty schoolgirl, saying, I'm really sorry I'm early. And uh,
Fashionably early.
and I just laughed and I said, "Oh God, I thought it was going to be the sniffer dogs and the police, and that I'd still have time to put some makeup on and brush my hair." And she threw her head back like she always did and burst out laughing and said, "Don't be silly." And then she came in, and it just sort of set the scene for a really lovely, low key appointment.
Yeah. Oh, she was one of the girls. I love that about her.
Yeah.
And you've had the privilege of dressing not just Princess Diana, lots of royalty. Well, I suppose her daughter-in-law, although they never met, did they? You've dressed the Princess of Wales, you've dressed Queen Camilla. I mean, Kate and Diana couldn't be more different, could they? In terms of, I think Kate is a bit more reserved and things. They'd have got on though, wouldn't they?
Oh God, yes. I mean, I'm so sad for
Me
both
too.
of them and for William, and that I'm so sad that they never met. They would have adored each other, I think.
Yeah, that's sad. And in terms of non-royal guests, but sort of pop royalty, Queen Bee, Beyonce, J Lo, Helen Mirren, who's played the Queen. There's lots of royal themes there. Who's had the biggest entourage? Who's asked for the craziest designs? Give us some of the gossip.
Yes, but Isabel, that's the funny thing about the way the fashion world works is, for me at least, because I didn't do made to order. Well, I did the odd piece, but most of it was ready to wear. Even the beaded evening gowns, we'd have a very good fitting service. And so, when Angelina Jolie wore Wakeley on the red carpet for the launch of her movie Salt, I think it was, in London, that dress had been called in from my PR agency. I didn't have a clue until all of the press started coming in the following morning, and my PR went, "Yes, we got it on her."
Wow.
The same is true for, a lot of Oscar dressing, or it was back in the day. Now I think it's a whole different thing. The stars have flown in by private jet to Paris and custom fit and all the rest of it, or the dresses go the other way back to
Yeah.
Hollywood. But back then it was very much, these dresses were part of the collection, and they were called in by a stylist. So I didn't sadly get to fit Beyonce or Angelina Jolie or Scarlett Johansson or any of the rest of them, but the dresses did grace them, and I feel very lucky that that was the case. And yes, I've had some amazing women in the fitting room, but actually I've always said that what gave me the most pleasure was actually that insecure woman who was possibly going through changes in her life coming in or coming in for her mother of the groom or mother of the bride, or that 18-year-old coming in for a 18th party dress, and seeing them come out of the changing room transformed and walking an inch taller and feeling amazing in what they were wearing. That to me gave me the ultimate buzz.
Yeah, I mean, feeling, I suppose, like they didn't know they could look that good, and that's thanks to being well dressed. I've only really experienced that once with my wedding dress, and I've never worn anything as expensive or as lovely since, and probably never will. I had a Suzanne Neville dress. She made it
Mm.
bespoke for me. It was such a glorious experience, and to this day, absolutely hands down my favorite thing. We went on honeymoon, and my mum sent it to the dry cleaners without speaking to me. Antique Spanish lace, the whole thing was ruined. They shrank it. I've never been able to wear it again. I had dreams of my daughter dressing up in it or wearing it on my anniversary. Heartbreak. It's terrible. But anyway, I did experience that whole haute couture thing once, and it was exactly as you described, thinking, wow, okay, I didn't know I had a waist like that. Thank you. The gratitude was incredible. Well, I want to go on then and talk about the pivot. And when you touched a little bit earlier on what happened to your business and COVID, but if you don't mind, I mean, when I met you, actually, funnily enough, was at a reinvention retreat with our mutual friend Rosie Nixon, and we were all going around talking about our various stories and our careers. And I was just completely shocked by your story, and I just couldn't believe that you had lost this incredible business. And do you mind sort of giving us a little bit of what happened there? Because I think you'd sold your ownership of your own name and became an employee of the business.
Yeah.
Do you think that was the beginning of the end in a way for it?
No, because it was to private equity, and you know, they talk a very ambitious
Yeah.
talk, and you think amazing. This is the next chapter. Cut a long story very short. We were on a really lovely trajectory, and beautiful Mayfair flagship, etc., etc. Then COVID hit, and COVID was brutal on a lot of fashion businesses. And I I think that the private equity company just thought, do you know what? This is time to cut the ties. It was a particularly unpleasant experience. It
But I was
was
just going to say, had you ever experienced, and I don't like to use the word failure because it's not, because you've gone on and obviously you already had achieved such success. It's not a failure. But was this in many ways the first and the worst blow that you'd ever experienced?
oh, I mean, it was the worst blow, but uh, my journey had been a journey of ups and downs. Let's put it that way. And I'm not one that actually dwells on the negatives. And so, I'm sure a therapist would have a field day with that, saying, well, you've got to process your grief or process whatever. But I just pushed on through, and I think self-belief and passion for what I was doing and all the rest of
Yeah.
it. But this was absolutely terminal. And I now look at the retail landscape, and I had 30 incredible years. Really amazing. I
Like
got
dreams.
to dress so many women, and yes, it was a real privilege to work with an amazing team, to work on such beautiful product. And now I look back and I think I am so glad I was pushed off that hamster wheel when I was, because it's opened up a whole new unbelievable chapter
Yeah.
for me. And I've never been happier in my work life, despite the fact that my creativity is not doing what it was, and it has segued into something totally different. But it's so exciting.
Yes.
I think, the one thing I would like to really sort of say to anyone that's listening to this is your toes will feel really close to the fire, and it's scary, but work through that heat and those fears, because it's amazing how many opportunities that are out there. And if you just give yourself that space to and be kind to yourself, to actually do a bit of self reflection and think about what the next chapter can be, then listen, I'm talking to someone who's in your new chapter.
Well, I mean, this really does resonate with me, to be honest, because I was on exactly that, the treadmill of churning out news for decades. And this has forced me to pause, to reassess. And I've had this huge creative side to me that I've never really explored. And yes, I still love the storytelling, but it's great fun doing a bit of content creation as well. And that's why I was asking you, really, not because I want to drag a difficult experience up, but really to inspire other people who are, because people do, they have these ups and downs. And like you, I don't really believe in therapists. I feel like dragging stuff up makes me feel sad. I would much rather, people might say it's putting things under there. I would just much rather crack on and try to find my happy place again. And that's always been my way of doing things.
Yeah, absolutely. Although I will say I did have some grief therapy,
Yeah.
and I went primarily to this unbelievable woman called Julia Samuel, and she's well known to be like, I call her the goddess of grief. I don't know, that's probably an unfair description of, but she's so brilliant at, because grief takes work to
Yeah.
process. And I'd always processed everything else,
Mm.
but when you lose a sibling, it's really complex.
Mm.
And I'd lost a sibling and a business. And so those are two huge relationships in your life. And she really helped me process that and unpeel those onion layers and also encouraged me. She used this lovely term called the fertile void because I was like, God, I've got to get going on to the next, the next. She said, you need to slow up and give yourself some space. And she said, I call it the fertile void, and
Mm.
which I love.
Yeah.
And just out of that, something will grow. You have to give it time. You have to inhabit this liminal space. And actually, when I took a breath and let myself think about that, that was amazing.
Yeah, that's so interesting. The fertile void. That makes me think about a volcano and all the volcanic ash and all of the detritus after a big explosion is actually really great for manure or for growing and for life and agriculture, which always seems a bit weird that ash and things are actually full of nitrates, aren't they? But I love that analogy. Really interesting.
And then the phoenix arises.
Yeah, love it. Can I ask you about your I think you have two brothers, and
Yeah.
with the one you lost in 2020, he was also a surgeon like your father. Was 2021 or 2020?
2021. Charlie was probably the top musculoskeletal radiologist in the country. So he was hugely talented, hugely gifted, spent his life helping other people. He'd lived a really healthy life, and he was struck down by a brain tumor. And before we knew it, it was, a glioblastoma, stage 4.
So cool, isn't it? And he
Absolutely.
was on the cusp of retiring, and his kids were raised, and he had everything to enjoy after all that work.
Everything.
That's so
Yeah,
unfair.
everything to look
And
forward.
your other brother, I presume both your brothers were incredibly, proud of what their sister had achieved as well. And a close-knit family all the way through. And I know your father's passed away. Is your mum still with you?
She is, and in fact, I'm going to celebrate her 92nd birthday next week. And my other brother is coming over from Albania, where he lives. So we'll be a little family again. And nothing gives her more pleasure than having the three of us together.
Yeah, I bet. And were they there at your OBE? I know it was Prince Charles then at Buckingham Palace. That must have been an incredibly proud moment.
It was a very special moment. I think yes, my mother and father were there. Hugh, my partner, was there. And I think it was probably one of the last times my father came up to London and we had a very special day together before he had Parkinson's and before he sort of would declined from it. So, we had this wonderful morning at Buckingham Palace and then went on, the four of us, to Harry's bar because when you are honored, it's the only day that you can wear your
Is that
honor.
right?
Yes, you can wear miniatures after that.
Oh.
And so it was just very special to go to Harry's bar in Mayfair with my beautiful OBE on and just have this very special lunch together.
Oh, that's a lovely memory and a good moment to dive into what's supposed to be a little bit of fun, but the quick fire round where you, without hesitation, have to choose one or other options. I'm going to put my glasses on because, as we discussed before, perhaps I even pressed record, I'm a little bit blind these days. But I'm going to ask you to make a decision which you would choose. Diana or Kate? Only joking. I would never ask you that. I just thought I'd make you laugh. Stay in or go out?
Oh, both. Honestly, both.
Okay.
Am I both?
I'll let you have one both. So there you go. You've used it up on the next one. Silk or cashmere?
Cashmere.
Good choice. Risk taker or gritty survivor?
I am both, but I think I'm a risk taker.
Burn it down or gently let it go?
Gently let it go.
That's you, I think so. You might be tempted to burn it down, but you're too
Yeah.
classy for that.
The older I get, the more I gently let things go. I'm less inclined to burn something down.
Interesting. Okay. Green
Hello.
juice or espresso martini?
Depends on the time of day, Isabel.
Okay, well, let's say 7 p.m.
It would be a vodka.
Yeah, you can't have coffee in the evening. I never understand espresso martinis unless you want to be awake all night. Bad decision. Dreamer or doer?
Doer.
Always say yes or boundary protector? They're difficult, I know.
I was and always say yes, and now I'm far more considered about my boundaries.
That's
So, yeah.
really, yeah, I think a lot of people find that hard early on in their career and in their life. And it takes some testicles, doesn't it, to say, actually, no, I don't want to do that. Power suit or barefoot?
Barefoot whenever I get the chance.
Love that. Take the call or let it ring?
Take the call.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I get offended when my phone rings. I don't know. It's just, I'm like, oh, or I think someone's died. It's terrible. It just makes me go high anxiety. Spa retreat or mountain hike?
Mountain hike.
Oh, love that. Go with your gut or plot every move?
Go with your gut.
Interesting. Live to work or work to live?
I love my work, but I love living. Ooh, I'm really on the fence here, aren't I?
Hard, isn't it?
I can't imagine not working. I
Yeah,
love
you're
it.
someone that dreams of retiring, to the Bahamas, and that's that. Feet up.
No.
Well, there you go then. Always happy or practicing gratitude?
I practice gratitude much more now than I ever have, and it makes me happy.
That's a good answer. Town or country?
Country.
Really? Because you grew up in the country, but you look at you there in your beautiful city penthouse, but your heart's in the country.
I love the city, but I love the country more. I love nature.
Same. Walk the dog or walk the runway?
Walk the dog to banish her from here, because otherwise she comes and she starts sort of jumping into my lap and doing ridiculous things that a Labrador shouldn't do.
Oh, I've got a cat in here, and it was a debate about whether to throw him outside, but he's curled up asleep happy, and I thought that was a bit cruel, especially as it was raining when we started. And last one, cook at home or eat out?
Cook at home.
Love it. What's your signature dish?
Oh, anything that's simple and healthy. It sounds silly, but I grow herbs on our terrace here. So I love a beautiful caprese salad in the summer. Just fresh tomatoes, fresh basil, and, avocado and mozzarella.
Gorgeous.
Happy.
I get the sense, just when I think of your fashion style and your look, it's sort of pared back, understated. And that sounds like your cooking taste as well. Is that just, you're not a no frills, no fuss kind of gal?
I am. I'm quality over quantity. I've always been that. So whether it's cooking, I want really, really beautiful, fresh ingredients. Whether it's fashion, I would just rather have that one immaculately cut jacket than a cupboard full of. So less is more.
Yeah, less is more. And we actually have forgotten that, haven't we, as society? We just want more, 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 more. And actually, just on that, because obviously when you started out in fashion, there wasn't all the social media and all the rest of it. I remember when I was at university, we would wear the same going out outfits on repeat. And then pretty much I left uni and Facebook appeared. And I remember then everyone started getting married. And I was like, I can't wear the same thing again because it's been photographed. That's, I think, really propelled fast fashion and turned people away from quality a little bit.
I couldn't agree with you more, and I think it's hugely sad. But I salute these actresses on the red carpet re-wearing something or having something altered. I love nothing more than to alter something or to upcycle something. And actually, it's very easy to get sucked into that when you
Yeah.
have your social media feed and you suddenly realize, oh my God, I was wearing that shirt earlier in the week to a different thing, and it's going to come up on my feed twice. But I think that's something to be celebrated, and I've got this hashtag reware don't care.
Love
But
that.
I think we should be like that. We should have friends in our wardrobe that we just love.
Yeah, well, also just the impact of fast fashion on the environment I think a lot of people have no idea about how damaging fast fashion is for the planet. It's really scary.
It is, but I think that message is now starting to get out there more and more. Thank goodness. And I just think we all need more circularity. You don't like something, get it on Vinted or give it to the charity shop or give it to someone who you know would love
Yeah,
it.
totally.
Get these things out of your wardrobe and moving.
Give it to your mum to send to the dry cleaner and you'll never wear it again. I'm not over that still.
Mum.
I just want to end really on what is next. And I know you said a little bit earlier that you are writing that book now. And it occurred to me when you described Princess Diana turning up early for some of those fittings in this flat that, looked like a house, but it was sort of a little bit Sex and the City in my head. I could just imagine this young girl starting out in this really cool flat. Do you think you might do a film? Do you think there could be a film about your life and the people you've dressed? Because I honestly feel like there is a film there.
Gosh, I that I've never even thought about that. So I'm
Okay. Next chapter.
well, maybe that screenplay writer is listening in. I don't know. Yes, if I have one regret, is not keeping a diary.
Oh gosh, yeah.
I mean, it's interesting as I am writing. And in fact, I have just one very funny story on that. My book is Style DNA and it's sort of finding your style and all the rest of it. And I was writing away earlier this year and I thought I've got to give some context. And so, I wrote 2 chapters and I sent it through to my agent, who's this brilliant, brilliant man. And he said, Amanda, you write really well, but this is your memoir, not the book you were commissioned to write.
Oh no!
I have written 10,000 words that are completely irrelevant. He said, "Don't worry, it's your second book."
Yeah, perfect.
And it was very cathartic, and things just keep coming back as you're writing that. So anyhow, so I've got half of my second book already written.
How on earth I know a few people who've written books and I'm in awe, like 10,000 words. Like, how did you do that? At the kitchen table? Have you got a
I
desk with a view? Do you find yourself staring into space for long periods of time?
I think you've got to be, from what I understand, is you've got to be really disciplined with yourself. And we have a home in Switzerland, and I based myself there pretty much for a couple of months while Hugh, my partner, sort of came and went every weekend. And sort of it was me and the dog. And so every morning I would get up and I would write for 3 or 4 hours before going for a really good hike to clear my head and sort of think again about what I'd written and what I would be writing the next day. So, yes, it's work. It's real proper work, says the girl on a Thursday who's only written 1,500 words so far this week, and that's going to be the focus from here on in.
Well, I shouldn't take any more of your time, but it's been an absolute honor to talk to you, and I knew you'd be really delightful to talk to. So thank you for being open and positive and just glorious. It's been really lovely.
Thank you, Isabel. And I remembered what that first season was like for me and approaching guests you know, and those first few yeses were so important. So I hope that my presence here has helped you in my tiny way get going and good luck on the journey because
Thank
it's
you.
fabulous. You'll
Yeah.
enjoy it so
Well,
much.
it's a privilege to talk to people and to hear their stories. So thank you, and you have been a huge help, huge help.
Oh,
Thanks very
well,
much.
it's been fun.
Amanda, I have absolutely loved talking to you. Thank you so much. You were the first guest to agree to come onto my podcast as well, and that means the world. So thank you for being honest, for showing us all what it's like to meet life's challenges with grace and positivity. And I feel sure people will be empowered by your stories today to perhaps turn the page on their own new chapters. To my listeners and viewers, please do share this and remember to follow along with this journey on my Instagram at New Chapters Podcast. You'll find my website link there with all of the episodes, the behind the scenes, and even my weekly newsletter. And all that remains really is for me to say, be kind to yourself, the version of you that got you here, and be bold to the one that you're becoming.